As long as you have the courage, you can do half-spin training. As long as you don't have a bad mind, there are many ways to repair it. In order to replace the broken half-spin bar, the master first needs to use a car saw to cut it. The main purpose is to cut the outer ring with a hole. In this way, the prepared bar can be replaced. When there is a step in the center of the surface, the master first needs to cut a groove to facilitate subsequent cutting. But because the thickness of the bar is not particularly thin and the half-axis is very high, the master can only slowly cut and process in order to avoid unnecessary damage to their hand-grinded car knives. And after the master cut the inside and outside, the damaged outer ring is also successfully removed. In order to facilitate the processing of the replacement plate, the master must first confirm the outer size of this section at the same time as the cut and cut. It is constantly narrowed to ensure that the outer ring of the replacement is sufficiently jointed, and thus increase the strength of the half-beam phalanx joint. But it is obvious that such thickness is not suitable for jointing. In order to avoid affecting the hardness of the copper core, the master has to cut out the outer gusset on the sides so that the replacement phalanx can be fastened by the gusset. Although this will increase the difficulty of repair, it can achieve the best jointing effect. And after the master used the gusset to measure the gusset in order to make the connection smoother, the master also used a wrong knife to grind the surface of the panel. Then, he used a card to record the outside of the existing valve. This data determines the inside of the valve, but because of the previous time cut, the master also used a sheep's ear to cut directly in case of only need to be processed in the same way. After the master cuts the circle, the small hammer is used to separate the inner and outer ring. At this time, the master only needs to cut the rough surface to process the data that has just been measured on the card. This greatly saves the time to remove the outer ring. With the clear internal diameter data, the master's speed is getting faster and faster. Through the repeated processing of the whole knife, the entire internal diameter is quickly met the requirements. In order to replicate the same pattern of the wheel, the car knives used must be measured with a wheel pattern to avoid inconsistent wheel pattern data. After the previous processing experience, the replaced outer ring is also successfully processed. Now the two can be welded through the wheel pattern. In order to facilitate the soldering, it is also necessary to use the fixing of their clamps. In this way, the master only needs to rotate the outer ring and the edge of the inner side is completely kept flat. The master uses the welding to weld the gap. The outer ring of the joint is completely rounded. When the small crack is left in the early stage, the welding is not welded on the surface. After the master has removed the remaining skin, the gap on the outside also needs to be welded because there is a step on the outside. Even if the crack is not cut, it will not affect the strength of the welding. After the master used up for bars, the bar was affected by the sweat. The master had to smoothen the surface. The bar was restored to its original shape without damage. The bar was covered with sweat. After the master polished the surface, the bar was replaced by a hairpin. The bar was replaced by a hairpin. This is a great operation.